Okay, Rick, I think when you're ready, we can begin.
Good evening. I'm Rick Holcomb, DMV Commissioner for the state of Virginia. And I want to thank all of y'all for taking time out of your busy schedule to be part of our virtual information session on DMV's new Fairfax Braddock Road Customer Service Center. I look forward to sharing with you our plans for this brand new office. And our goal is to provide Virginians with excellent DMV service, but also to be good neighbors. I hope that this virtual information session will help answer some of your questions and maybe allay some of your concerns. Before I start with the presentation, I'd like to recognize some of our special guests who are with us tonight. First, I'm honored that we have the first female Speaker of the House of Delegates in the 400 years of the General Assembly, Elaine Fillicorn. She actually, and I'm sure you're seeing a lot of claps, Madam Speaker, but she does a fabulous job. She represents the 41st House District, which is the district that this Customer Service Center will be in. Now, I do know with the reconvened session starting tomorrow, and the need to get all of our legislators down to Richmond, we're going to lose the speaker after the presentation, but she did want to be part of this. Next, we've got Senator Dave Marsden, who represents the nearby 37th Senate District, and probably more important to us, he's the chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee. Also, a very long-term and very senior member of the House, Dave Bulova, is with us tonight, and appreciate him being here. He represents the 37th House District. Senator Chap Peterson had wanted to be with us tonight, but had a conflict that he could not change. But with us tonight is Kathy Nielsen. His aide is participating. We're also joined by Delegate Kate Corey of the 38th District. And finally, probably someone who doesn't need much introduction, your supervisor, James Walkinshaw, who represents the Fairfax County Braddock District. I'd like to also welcome the architect for this project, Jeremy Jones, with Riddick, Fiedler, Stern PC, as well as our civil engineer on the project, Mike Albright from Kimberly Horn. We also are joined by the director of the Virginia Department of General Services. And finally, we are honored to be joined by two of our colleagues from the Virginia Department for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, Elaine Hernandez and Amanda Wharton-Stacy, who are providing interpretive services for us, and we deeply appreciate their volunteering to do so. So let me first start. I'm going to ask our elected officials to make a few words, and obviously we will start with Speaker Fillicorn. So Jessa, hopefully you can unmute her.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Commissioner. It's great to see you. It's great to see so many engaged and active constituents and neighbors and friends joining us this evening. So thank you all so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know many are on today, others have provided written testimony, and I just, really appreciate your engagement. And I'd like to thank my colleagues that are on here, Senator Marsden and Chairman Bulova, Chairwoman Corey, and the entire Fairfax County delegation. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Supervisor Walkinshaw. Thank you so much for your continued partnership with Braddock Magisterial District. I think since your election to the Board of Supervisors, I obviously did not anticipate, nor did any of us really, what was going to, the crises we would be, facing. And you are a tireless advocate and a reliable local partner, so I thank you so much. I wanted to thank Commissioner Holcomb, as well as the entire staff, for accepting my invitation to being here to make sure that you could meet with our constituents virtually like this in this fashion to ensure that we had an opportunity for everybody to engage and have a respectful and also informative conversation. I think all of us here, appreciate that the DMV obviously is not required to conduct some, this public presentation. You guys have really gone out of your way to do so, and it actually came to I became aware that actually you not only offered to do this and agreed to do this, but you actually even pushed back the project's plan timeline to quickly accommodate this this discussion with our community. So I thank you so much. Clearly, you all are committed to being a good neighbor and maintaining a strong, friendly relationship with our community. And I know everybody on here appreciates it. Certainly a top priority for me as well. And as you will soon hear, Commissioner, Braddock Road in particular, this location has been the subject of a lot of ongoing land use and planning conversations over the years. So, and we know that the Commonwealth has spent a lot of years developing these plans and preparing for this site specifically as a DMV service center. And so, and I know your commitment really is to serve the nearby community. So we look forward to hearing more from you about the plans, about how DMV plans on running this this facility, no doubt, efficiently as well. I apologize for not being able to stay on with everybody, but I, again, appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you all for being here. And I'm glad we were able to organize and put together this important conversation. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and best of luck in the reconvene. Chairman Marston.
Well, thank you, Rick. This is, again, I'm Senator Dave Marsden. This proposed facility is just slightly outside my district on Braddock Road. But I have been through with Commissioner Holcomb and his staff a previous attempt to relocate a DMV facility from Arlington to the Lake Barcroft Plaza over in Falls Church, and it's understandable the concerns that citizens have when a DMV is placed in their neighborhood, due to the issues around traffic and parking and different elements that will bring change to any community. And in this situation, parking is not going to be an issue, but it is one that it needs to be heard. The citizens need to be heard from, but I think that the commissioner, from what I have read and talked to him about, is that they have an excellent plan put together that I hope we get some great feedback on here tonight, so that we'll have a better understanding of how the community feels, and we'll have a better understanding of how the project is due to roll out, and we can then take it from there. Rick, thank you so much for having us tonight, and I will be anxious to hear what our citizens have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair Bulova.
Great. Thank you very much, Rick. And it's good to see everybody here. David Bulova, I represent the 37th House District, and that includes George Mason University, University Mall, areas to the west. Prior to the 2011 redistricting, the Northern Virginia Training Center area was part of my district. And who knows, with redistricting coming again in 2022, very well maybe again. Regardless, I think what you've heard from the prior two speakers is that this is a facility that is going to serve our region and will certainly have an impact on the larger Braddock Road corridor. It's something that is going to be part of the community for a good long time, and so we want to make sure that we get this right. We do recognize, as Speaker Philitorn mentioned, that the state does go through a different process. That notwithstanding, I think all of us on the call here who are elected officials and many of the citizens have worked very, very hard with our other state agencies and organizations to make sure that we do have that continuous dialogue so that we're able to identify issues and concerns and make sure that those things are addressed. I think George Mason University is a great example of that. And so we found that while that cooperation is not required, it does end up with a better product and a better outcome for everybody involved. Likewise, I just want to say thank you again to Commissioner Holcomb, Supervisor Walkinshaw, to Speaker Fillercorn for helping to get this tonight's forum put together. I did see a preview of the slides that everybody is about to go through, and I know that there is a slide specifically that says good neighbors. And of course, part of being a good neighbor is this kind of dialogue, and it's making sure that folks are listening and that we're open to suggestions by the folks who are going to be your neighbors. And so I know that there's a lot of concern and interest in transportation and the impact on traffic. I'm also personally interested in hearing plans for stormwater management as well as tree canopy, which I know are two things that are very important to this particular community. And so again, looking forward to the presentation, looking very much forward to the public comments, and I think most importantly to the actions and the follow-up that'll come from DMV afterwards. So thank you everybody for being here. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Delegate. And Supervisor Walkinshaw.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Holcomb. And I think I also just saw Delegate Vivian Watts joined as well. So I want to make sure we acknowledge her. She's forgotten more about transportation issues than all of us know, probably. Great to see you, Delegate Watts. And I really appreciate our entire General Assembly delegation, especially Speaker Fillercorn, for helping to make this happen. And just to put this into context for folks, I suspect I can see we have a lot of folks on the meeting tonight who live in the neighborhood surrounding the training center. Many of you were involved and attended meeting after meeting after meeting that my predecessor, Supervisor Cook, organized to finalize the plan for the Erickson facility at the training center. And that happened because the Commonwealth sold that site to Erickson, so it then had to go through the county's approval process. What's different here is the Commonwealth is retaining this site. The DMV has acquired it, so they aren't required to go through any county approval process. And unfortunately, in my view, the state does not require this kind of public outreach and engagement, which I think would be an improvement in the process and something maybe for the General Assembly to consider moving forward. That said, I'm deeply appreciative that Commissioner Holcomb and our delegation have voluntarily agreed to hold this meeting to hear your thoughts, concerns, and feedback, and hopefully make improvements in the plan that they're going to present here tonight. I want to thank Jess from DMV and Marcia Pape from my office for doing a lot of work to pull this meeting together quickly, and all of you for joining tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, and I very much appreciate you recognizing Delegate Watts. I will make a comment that it took the election of Delegate Fillercorn to the speakership to actually get Delegate Watts appointed to the House Transportation Committee. And I will tell you, and all of her colleagues on the committee will tell you, she is a fabulous, fabulous member of the House Transportation Committee. And to not have a former Secretary of Transportation on a committee just really was a wrong that was righted by the new majority. So thank you, Delegate Watts, for being with us. And again, Delegate Corey, thank you. I know you just want to be recognized and not speak. So, okay, before we actually start the presentation and open up to questions and comments, I'm going to ask Jess to sort of go over the structure of the informational session. So Jess, if you will just explain, Jess is with our DMV Communications Office, just explain how everything is going to work tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner. Brandy, do you have the slides you can share? Perfect. Thank you, Brandy. So to start, I'd like to share the agenda for this evening session. Commissioner Holcomb is going to provide you guys with a timeline of the Fairfax Braddock Road Customer Service Center project. Next, DMV's architect will give a brief presentation on the project. Commissioner Holcomb will then return and share some additional information on DMV's current service model And then finally, we're going to open the meeting up to answer your questions. So for everyone who registered to speak during this meeting, they will be given the opportunity to speak. I will call the names of the registered speakers and I'll unmute your microphones so you can ask your question. We ask that you guys keep it to 3 minutes. That way everyone has an opportunity to speak. When you approach that 3-minute limit, if you're still talking, I will raise my hand to just give you a heads up that you're approaching the end of the 3 minutes. And then once we go through everyone who registered to speak, we'll open it up to others who may have questions. I know that many of you might have questions after you see the presentation. When we open it up to anybody to ask a question or issue a comment, you can indicate that you have a question if you're in the WebEx application by using the raise hand feature, and I'll call on the participants one at a time. So we're going to try our best to answer all of your questions. However, if we can't answer a question or we can't answer it fully, we will follow up with you via email. And then this session also, just so you know, is being recorded and will be available for viewing afterwards. As Rick mentioned, we are very grateful to the Virginia Department for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing for providing our interpretation services for us tonight. You will see Elaine Hernandez and Amanda Wharton-Stacy. They'll be switching off this evening. Thank you guys both for being here. So if you are deaf or hard of hearing, you can pin the interpreters and pin their window so that that's what you see. They are listed in the participant chat as interpreter Elaine Hernandez and interpreter Amanda. And so you go to their window, and when you hover over their window where they appear, there are 3 little dots. Click on those dots and then select lock a participant to this location. And that way you'll be able to see them on your screen. So that wraps it up for me. Rick, I'll send it back to you.
Okay, great. We'll go ahead and get started. DMV has been looking to relocate our Fair Oaks Mall office for more than a decade. Back in 2013, we issued a request for proposal, but none of the submissions met our needs. Then in 2015, this state property became available. So we purchased 3.9 acres of the property in 25 from the Virginia Department of Behavioral Health and Development Services at fair market value. Our project was quite frankly delayed because of our budget challenges. But in the meantime, we maintained the property and briefly allowed for some motorcycle training. We plan to break ground on this project later this summer, with construction being about 9 to 10 months, with hopefully opening sometime late spring, early summer of next year. As has been mentioned, but before we are able to break ground on this project, we are required by state law to present our plans before the Art and Architectural Review Board, or AARB, for review and comment. The AARB is a state board with 6 members appointed by the governor. Their charge under the Virginia Code is to review the acquisition and design of buildings and structures by the Commonwealth, and to make recommendations to the director of the Department of General Services. Any state agency demolishing or building a state-owned facility must present before this board for review and comment. As I said earlier, we have selected Riddick, Fiedler, Stern, PC of Norfolk to complete this project. And actually, they're not new to us because they have done a number of interior renovations for DMV throughout the state, and particularly in Northern Virginia. They are responsible, and you may have been to some of these offices that I'm going to mention, but they are responsible for the build out of our new Prince William Manassas office off of 66, our Fairfax Westfield's renovation office, Alexandria they renovated, and they also did the build out for our new Sterling Boulevard office, and we've been extremely happy with what they've done. Now, Jeremy Jones is a principal at the firm and is a licensed architect through the American Institute of Architects. To provide you with more detailed information on the building itself, and what the property will look like when completed, I'm now going to turn it over to Jeremy.
Thank you, Rick, for this opportunity. Thank you, everyone here gathered. Jess, could you do me one favor and actually unmute Mike Albright as well? He'll be helping me out later in the presentation.
Yes.
So again, my name is Jeremy Jones with Braddock Road Stern Architects. We've been given this great opportunity to work with DMV on their new Fairfax Braddock Customer Service Center. You can go to the next slide. Just a quick status and description of our current project. We're currently we're in between the preliminary design phase and the construction document phase. So we've already submitted our drawings to department or DEB, the Division of Engineering and Building. They provided us comments back. We'll take those comments and move forward to finalizing our construction documents. But before all that happens, as Rick had said, we will be presenting in front of the AARB to get their comments and input that will be forwarded to the head of the DGS to make recommendations of our actual design of our building. But this particular building is actually a prototype of somewhat of DMV. It's an actual customer service center that they already have built out in Roanoke, and it works so well for them that they would they just want to move it to this site. And with the site configuration, that particular layout works well with this site. And it's a one-story building, a little over 15,000 square foot, rectangular in shape for the most part. We've got some center, as we will see later in the renderings, we've got some center projections. A lot of the elements that we use are very typical of the surrounding adjacent architecture. We've got gables, we have hip roofs. The main veneer of our building will be brick veneer, like many of the adjacent buildings in the area. So aesthetically, we're trying our best and doing a very good job of matching and meeting all the other architecture that's surrounding us commercially. And the elements we have are sort of, we know that we're in a residential sort of neighborhood, so we are paying homage to those features as well. Next slide. I'm sure everyone knows where this actual location is at. This is just a vicinity map showing we're in Fairfax County. The actual site is the former Northern Virginia Training Center, Virginia State property. Our particular site is a little over 4 acres, and you can see it on the location map. It's sort of in the upper right portion of that much larger that Erickson is developing. So we're sort of in our northern property line basically is right there along Braddock Road. And the two main roads really are Braddock Road, and then Burt Station Road sort of comes in and ties in close to our intersection. So next slide. These are a couple existing site views. If you're coming down Braddock Road from George Mason, you can see the existing entranceway into our site. The one on the right, top right, is basically standing in front of the entrance to the funeral home, which is across the street looking into our site. And this one is particularly interesting because you can see the tree screening that's already established on Braddock Road on our northern border of our property. And, it's very dense. It provides great screening from the property behind us. And DMV from the get-go was very adamant about our design and our building being able to maintain that screening from our property onto Braddock Road, and that's what we've done. The bottom left gives you a juxtaposition of the actual site. You can see there on the right side the existing parking lot, which we are going to reuse and resurface. That was another draw that DMV really, was drawn to this property because it already had this, I believe it was 150 space parking lot already there. So our building essentially is going to go from the left side of the parking lot to, there's a feeder road that's currently on the property that sort of works itself around, further down the site, which we'll be removing. But between that road and the parking lot is essentially where our building is going. So you can kind of see that tree screening down Braddock is going to be maintained. Next slide. These are a few pictures of the adjacent architecture. The commercial architecture that's close. We've got about a mile to the east of us. We've got Twin Brook Center, which the architecture there is, predominantly most of the buildings around us are all brick and various roof material, shingles, shakes, metal roof. To about a mile and a half west, we've got the University Mall Shopping Center. It's a little bit more modern, most of the outbuildings, but they do have a Patriot Square office building complex, which again is more traditional, brick veneer, gable shingle roofs. The funeral home that's directly across, the Fairfax Memorial Funeral Home that's directly across the street. Again, very traditional columns, hip roof, gable, a lot of the same elements that we will be using in our building. Now, our direct next door neighbor is still the Virginia State Police, and then the actual Virginia National Guard Recruiting Center. Same type of materials, more of a modern building, but again, the same elements are used with accent banding, brick veneer, and then about a mile and a half north up Burke Station Road, we have the Fairfax Square Commercial Center. That uses a little bit more stone as a veneer and a little bit more metal roof, but a lot of storefront, very clean. So a lot of the same elements we'll be sort of taking in and putting into our building. Next slide, please. So this is our site plan. Essentially, this doesn't really show the entirety. Our site actually keeps going down Braddock Road, where it sort of meets up with the bottom property line, but the majority of this is kind of showing our site. As you can see, we come right off of, we have an entrance off of Braddock Road. We're a little over 15,000 square feet. I mean, we had a couple of challenges with the site, right? We had to keep the existing tree screening. That was paramount. We had to do, actually this site actually has quite a bit of an elevation change from the west to the east. It sort of is flat on the west side and slopes up as you go east or east down Braddock Road. And, we had to deal with the stormwater drainage. Now, we did benefit of taking out, again, like I said, there was a feeder road that basically split our property in half. So we're removing that. So we're actually removing a lot of impervious surface that would add to the stormwater. But adding a building and taking that road out, we're basically a wash between the two. But we are expanding the existing parking lot to add some employee parking. And we did expand the main parking for the public. And I believe Rick will get into this later, but this site, the parking lot had to be laid out such that DMV is doing all their testing on the parking lot or in the lot itself. They don't take them out on the streets. All the testing will be in the parking itself or the parking lot itself. So they have to sort of cone off sections of it. So we had to add some additional public parking to make that happen on test days. But again, we took advantage of facing our entrance away from Braddock Road. We've got the southern exposure. Most of our glazing is on that side to let as much natural light into our lobby area. I'm sure everyone's been into a DMV before. They can feel kind of cold inside. So our attempt is to make this building as welcoming and as warm as possible. And the additional landscape, as you can see, we are really sort of emphasizing that screening on Braddock Road. So we're adding another layer of landscaping, tree planting to further buffer us from the Braddock Road. And this was the best place for our building just because of the grade. We didn't want to take half the mountain or hill away and take all the vegetation to the east. This road that we took away sort of gave us the open land for our building to be placed. So it was sort of a perfect fit. Now, dealing with the stormwater on this particular site, we have added, and you can see at the bottom left corner of our parking lot and the upper left side, kind of left to the handicap, we've added underground storage tanks. So when the storms do come in and that rain water is running off our building and running off of our paved surfaces, we actually collect it on site, stored in underground storage tanks until the storm has passed, and that water then gets sort of dispersed into the sanitary or the stormwater line to be taken away. So we don't overburden the existing stormwater with our stormwater. And Mike, I don't know if you want to add anything other than that.
Only that, as Jeremy had said, we are treating this as a redevelopment site, so we are actually decreasing the overall runoff by that 20% as required by the state. So
Yeah.
I think that's about it, Jerry.
Okay. So we can go to the next slide. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but for material selection, seeing is believing. And I apologize. Usually when we do these presentations, we actually have the physical samples so people can see them and touch them and feel them. And unfortunately, I have to take pictures of them in this new sort of virtual world that we live in now. But these next few slides are sort of the exterior finish selections that we've chosen. And we've tried to go with a more warm template or warm feel for the colors to make, like I said, make the building as inviting as we can for the public. So the warmer colors tend to bring out those feelings a little bit easier than sort of cooler colors. So we're using a field blend for the field brick. We've kind of picked the sort of, you pick a middle brown and then you have a percentage of a darker and a lighter. So that's what the main field of the masonry is going to be. We have an monochromatic accent band that's going to have a little texture to it to add some artistic interest in our water tables, our soldier courses, roll-locks. I mean, all these elements that are used throughout traditional architecture, we're kind of taking those pieces. We've got entry columns, hip roof, gable sort of projections. So all those elements we will be using. All our storefront windows and doors, we've got a dark bronze finish that will go well with our warm brick color. We are using IGUs for our glass, which are insulated glass units. We'll have the low E, will meet all the energy criteria of today's code to be as efficient as we possibly can. Next slide, please. And these are the asphalt shingles. For this particular project, we're speccing an architectural grade asphalt shingle. We'll have a 50-year warranty on it. All these material selections are based off of this building being here for a very long time. And we take care and pride in selecting materials for DMV that this building's going to look as amazing it is on the first day as 10, 15, 20 years, whatever down the road. And all these material selections are very low maintenance for a DMV, very easy to maintain, to create that sort of, maintain that look of a brand new building. We have fiberboard cement for our lap siding and for our trim. So again, won't rot. All materials come pre-finished, very low maintenance. And we did add a little bit of standing seam metal roof on the gable eyebrows to add a little bit of interest in those areas. But again, that's pretty typical traditional architecture. So we've just taken those great elements and just sort of combined it into our building here. So next slide. The following slides are going to be basically the perspectives and elevations. We've got the the south elevation. This is the entry and exit. The way DMV works, they usually have these long teller lines. So we've got an entryway. They've got a great system. You come in, go to the information center, wait to be called. You walk out the exit way. So it's a nice sort of moving clockwork system that they have inside there. So the west elevation is basically what you'll be seeing from Braddock Road for the most part. The east elevation is facing the employee parking lot. That's where the employees will be coming and going mostly. And the north elevation, which will have the tree screen and our additional landscaping, that's where we house most of the mechanical, electrical, sprinkler, back of the house. But that's further down the elevation, sort of tucked as far back into the tree screen as we possibly could. So we made a conscious effort to have those mechanical pieces a part of every building as far away from that entrance as we possibly could. So we took full advantage of the tree screening that's actually already there. Next slide. And again, this is just a three-dimensional representation, sort of a south exterior perspective of the building as a whole. You can, scale-wise and proportion-wise, we try to keep it close to, human-sized scale as we can. So the entrances and exits are very, very inviting. They're not, overly large or sort of ostentatious. They're, this is for everybody in the public. So, it's a public building. We're all going to be using it, coming and going. So we try to make it as inviting as possible. You can flip through these next ones. Again, it's another southeast perspective. This one I'm just trying to show, we do, like every commercial building, we have a dumpster, and our dumpster enclosure will be cladded and in the same brick veneer masonry as the main building. So, we're going to try to complement that as an eyesore as it is, make it as nice as we possibly can. Next slide. But again, even that dumpster, again, is on the opposite side of the entrance. So, as far as Braddock Road and our entryway, we moved it and put it as far away as we could on the building. Again, this is another south perspective. You can go to the next one. Landscaping for these projects are always, critical. Traditionally, flower beds are not around your whole building. So, the bang for the buck is we want to put them by the doors in the entryway so people can actually enjoy, just dress up the entranceway. So very simple, very easy bushes, landscape selections have been chosen for very easy maintenance for DMV for the long term. So that's kind of the emphasis that we've chosen. We'll put the flagpoles up front, pretty standard for all the DMVs. You can go to the last one, please. This is sort of a representation of that entrance into our site here off of Braddock Road. As you can see, that tree screen is, we are going out of our way to keep it. And from the previous slide, you can see it's pretty dense. It's very hard to see through it. And the Erickson Group itself, our property line is probably 15 feet or so inboard of the actual street. So Erickson actually has their own landscape plan for that entryway as well. And that's what we're showing here. So that's going to provide even more screening for our building from Braddock Road. So really, we're just sort of pooching out the back corner there visually. And I think that's one of the beauties of the site, that we can kind of slide back in there and sort of very nicely just, be behind the trees, screen us, from the majority of traffic down Braddock Road. So, and then this entryway actually is only a right-hand turn or an entryway. Erickson's providing another whole intersection where the Burke Station Road comes in, where the main traffic light, when people leave here, if they want to make a left and go down west, down Braddock, like toward George Mason, that will be the main intersection for the majority of that, that traffic coming and going. So I appreciate everyone's time. I pass it back off to Rick.
Thank you, Jeremy. One element of DMV's mission is providing superior service, and that's exactly what we hope to do to this area of Fairfax County. Certainly, for years, it's been served by the Fair Oaks Mall location. As I said, we've been looking to replace that office for quite some time. We originally went into Fair Oaks in 1983, and quite frankly, it's just not serving our needs at this point. We can't offer any type of road test at the Fair Oaks Mall, not even the modified on-site test that we are currently doing and plan to continue to do. It's also not a real good deal for the taxpayers, because right now we're paying $200,000 a year in rent. And to date, we've paid close to $5 million in rent for that facility, while a state-owned is a much better investment for the taxpayers. Our goal is that no one should have to travel more than 30 minutes or 30 miles for DMV service. And certainly, if we close the Fair Oaks Mall office and did not build this new office on Braddock Road, we would not be able to meet that for the needs of the folks who live in this area. Next slide, you'll see we thought it'd be interesting to see the folks who actually have the zip code that we will be within, and that's 22032. Where do these folks currently, where do y'all currently go to get your DMV service? Certainly Fair Oaks Mall is the largest, but people are traveling as far away as Tyson's Corner, Fairfax Westfields, Arlington, and then some of the other offices at a lower rate. Certainly if Fair Oaks did not exist, that travel pattern from a distance of where this zip code is would be much more extensive. As I said, we want to be good neighbors. We are a reputable state agency. We're quiet. We are not open in the evenings. We're not open half of the afternoon of Saturday, and we're not open on Sundays. We maintain our property well, and it's clean, and our employees are your neighbors. We will have. I'm not sure if we'll have people in that zip code who working at that office, but our employees are citizens as well. And we're excited to join our fellow state agencies, Virginia State Police, the Virginia Department of Military Affairs, and George Mason as on this stretch of Braddock. Now, what I really want to take a couple of minutes on is to talk about our new service module that I'm hoping will put folks at ease. Obviously, the COVID pandemic has changed the way, changed lives of all of us, but has also changed how DMV is delivering its services. To ensure the health and safety of our customers and employees, and to meet the social distancing requirements, we've moved to an appointment-only customer service module. We take no walk-in customers. Now, only half of our windows are open statewide to again ensure this social distancing, and we're conducting transactions in the DMV for only those transactions that you have to be in the DMV. So, for instance, gone are the days that you would drive up to the DMV, wait in line to renew your tags, your vehicle tags. You can do that online. You can do that through the mail. In fact, looking at where we are from a service standpoint, we actually are doing 69,000 more transactions on a given week than we did before the pandemic. I will tell you, since we started reopening the offices in May of last year, we've done 13.7 million transactions for our citizens. Only 4.3 million of those transactions actually were done in a customer service center. And again, you're seeing a tremendous growth in the internet. We did 57,000 more internet transactions last week as compared to a standard week before the pandemic. So we expect that migration of transactions is permanent. And so that's why we feel that continuing the appointment only will work for us. When we're permitted to reopen more windows, like I said, we plan to keep the appointment system. Now, I know traffic is a major concern. The majority of the questions that were submitted in advance talk about traffic, but I think we are going to be able to limit the flow in and out of this new office. If you haven't been to a DMV recently, this will bring back nightmares for you. This is the DMV of old. This is the pre-pandemic where you would just walk in, take a number, sit as patiently as you could to be called to the window to get your transaction. Normally, particularly this office, when we close the doors at 5 o'clock, we normally were there until about 7:30, serving the folks who were in the chairs prior to us closing. Now, fast forward to the new DMV. This is what that same office looks like, and we are controlling the flow. And again, quite frankly, we're doing more transactions through all models than we did before. as I said, it's important to note that the appointment system will limit the car trips to and from the DMV, and those appointments are spread out evenly over the course of a 9-hour business day. Right now, when we open the office, we expect to do 350 to 400 appointments a day. And looking at our 9-hour open schedule, that would be about 39 to 44 appointments or cars per hour. Even after the pandemic is over and we could open more windows, even if we opened every single window, which normally we're just not staffed to do, that would be 800 appointments a day and 89 appointments per hour. One of the other changes that Jeremy sort of alluded to, because of the pandemic, we just don't feel it's safe for the customers or for our employees to literally get in a closed setting and within a car and take the novice driver out on the road for a skills test. So we have come up with a new testing model that was modeled after what the state of Maryland does and the state of South Carolina, where all of the testing is done on a closed course on our parking lot. And that's, we test certain maneuvers. We're finding that the pass-fail rate is about the same as it was previously. And so that will not increase traffic on the roads by taking someone out on a skills test route. I know one of the questions that we got was, what hours are we going to be keeping? Well, you can see the hours right there, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Now, every day we close from 1 to 2 o'clock for lunch. So that's our hours. On Saturdays, we're 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. One of the lessons that we have learned about our offices, because quite frankly, we've built offices that had no one around us, and then condominium development developed around us. And so we had a lot of folks from the neighborhood deciding to do practice testing in our parking lot or to do other things that involved litter being created. And so we will have a gated parking lot. And so when the last employee leaves the office, and we assume that that's going to be no later than about 6:30 each evening, we will pull the gates down and lock them so that no one can be on our property after we close. Let's see next. Okay, and that's actually concludes my presentation, and I hope that you found the information to informative. As I said, we look forward to serving you. We want to make DMV service convenient. Probably everyone on this call has had to go to the DMV at least once in their life. You usually need to go every 8 years for your license. You don't have to go for your vehicle tags because you can do that online or through the mail. If you buy a car, you have to go to the DMV. Certainly, we also are frontline for the division of vital records. So if you're in need of a birth certificate, marriage, divorce decree, we can offer that. We can offer that for you. As I said, we've gotten some very good questions in advance. I'm hoping that my presentation has answered many of those questions. But I think at this point, to the people who've submitted questions, I'm now going to turn back over to Jess. She's going to recognize our neighbors in order of sign up. And for those who have submitted questions in advance, she will give you the option of reading your question, or she can read the question and then present the answer. So. And once we finish the written questions, then we will start recognizing other folks that signed up for questions and comments. Let me mention one other thing, that if in fact someone, one of our customers out there has a individual customer DMV issue, they may need an appointment, or they may be having a challenge getting some type of DMV work done. Jess is also going to tell you how you can go offline and contact us, and then we will have someone back to you tomorrow to help resolve any outstanding DMV issue that you might have. So Jess, with that, let me go back to you and ask you to start calling on our participants.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Sire. I will, let me give you the email first. If you have, as Rick mentioned, if you have any individual DMV issues, feel free to email communications@dmv.virginia.gov. communications@dmv.virginia.gov. We will keep an eye on that email address, and we will hook you up with someone who will be able to help you first thing tomorrow morning. So our first question comes from Michael Perrell. There are about 90 people on this call, so please bear with me as I search for your name and unmute you. Mike, I just sent you a request to unmute, and you can ask your question.
Okay, thank you. Since I emailed 5 questions, and I heard you say you would respond to some of these email questions, I'm not going to bother to read them in a few minutes because a few things occurred to me in listening. First of all, is there going to be a plan to add a traffic signal at your entrance to this building? Is that, did you hear? Did you hear me?
Commissioner, there you go.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out who would be the best person to answer that. Jeremy, can you answer that? I know that the Erickson Group is adding a traffic light the next road down, but I mean, certainly we can always engage VDOT to see if this intersection requires or would allow for an additional traffic light. Jeremy, anything you want to add on that? Because you have to unmute Jeremy.
Jeremy, I just sent you the request.
And remember, he's on the phone.
Yeah.
Jeremy, you gotta unmute yourself. Pound 6.
There you go. Yes, I believe Erickson did all those the VDOT studies, and that light at where Burke Station comes into Braddock is going to be their main light that is for their complex. That whole 76-acre that they're doing, and they actually have a road that feeds right into the entrance to our actual parking lot. The actual road, or the actual turn lane off of Braddock on to that road, is really just a right-hand turn, and leaving that road is just a right-hand turn back onto Braddock. So if you leave our actual site and drive up to Braddock, you can only make a right. You actually have to go down that road that Erickson's putting in to the light at Burke Station and Braddock to control all that. So that's part of their planning, and we're taking advantage of that because they're putting in the light there and all the turn lanes and all that. So that's the main way that we're going to be coming and going into our site, a lighted intersection right there.
Wait, so it's lighted where where Erickson is, but you're not putting an additional light at the entrance to your place. That's correct.
Well, no, right now it's only a right-hand turn in and a right-hand turn out.
Okay, and then I think I heard Supervisor Walkinshaw allude that going forward, maybe our state legislatures should consider changing the law to require the state to adhere to local laws and procedures for land use issues like this. How does one get the ball rolling to introduce that possible law?
I can't answer that. I don't know if that law would say that the federal government also has to be bound by local ordinance. And I look, the General Assembly enacts and we execute whatever they do, but there's a very strict project procedure that we go through that we're following. And so certainly if the General Assembly decides that they'd rather us go on local, yeah, it gives us a little bit more flexibility to decide where we want to locate an office, what county or what city we want to locate in.
Okay. Yeah, I think everyone, I don't think anyone who's participating in this from the community is concerned that the building is going to look, like a slum. So it's very nice. I think we're more concerned about the impact on traffic in a residential area, which was kind of part of what I was alluding to in the questions I emailed as to whether there's been other DMVs in residential areas like this, other parts of the state. And I'll stop there for my turn.
And yes, to answer your question, you can just go over to the Franconia office. You can go to Tyson's Corner office, the Alexandria office. But those three are very interesting concepts because when we built, we were the only game in town, and then condominiums were built up all around us. So I think that might be an indication that residents are not offended by being a next door neighbor to DMV. But those are some examples that you can drive by and see. But we were, in those cases, we were there before the residents.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Rick, this is Dave Marsden.
Yes, sir.
If I could address Mike's question, and it is a good one. The state, we are a Dillon rule state, and the state maintains authority over many things unless we delegate them to localities. And in terms of state property, the tradition has always been that the state has a right to do within their own laws, regulations, and policies to use the land as they see fit. However, that being said, this very process that we're going through here today is indicative of the way that Rick and the folks at DMV want to do business, which is to hear from residents and to have their questions answered and to try to adjust the project in ways that will better fit into the community. I'll be honest with you, I think it's very unlikely that kind of legislation would be successful to turn it over to completely local decision making. Very often that gets into the politics of who's in power. It gets into some very difficult things, and there are very important projects that the state operates that need to be accomplished. And so I don't think that will happen. But what you will always get is efforts like this that DMV has put together to make sure that you are heard and that suggestions and changes can be made to the project. But I do not believe, in all honesty, that kind of a bill would be very successful because of the needs that the state has all over the Commonwealth to provide services to people, and it would allow local counties to sort of make it difficult for people in a nearby county to have access to a DMV because that county wouldn't allow it to be located where it needed to be located. Rick, did I state that in a way that makes any sense?
Yeah, I think you did, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if I could just add on to that really quickly, because I think Senator Marsden hit it exactly right. I don't see a bill, that would allow a local land use planning to go ahead and trump a state project. That said, I do think that there is incredible value to open up the community dialogue as soon as possible in the process, because the further along you get into that process, when you're doing final reviews, it makes it very difficult to react and respond to legitimate concerns that would be much easier to be able to incorporate into that project if they're identified early. And so that is something, that we can, either continue to work on organically like this one, or what we've done with George Mason, or perhaps it needs to be something that could be legislatively done. And I think that would be more open to a positive reception. If we were just saying, hey, if you are a state project, you have to have a public outreach process, and it needs to be done at certain points so that you can get, good comments and feedback early in the process. And I'd be happy to
Yeah.
work with my colleagues on something like that.
If I could just jump in, because my comments were referenced, and I was not suggesting and certainly would not expect that the state would cede that kind of authority to local governments. What I was suggesting is perhaps a requirement for this kind of public meeting before a state facility can be built, because respectfully, if I had not called Speaker Fillercorn and Delegate Bulova and Senator Marsden and others, this meeting tonight would not be happening. And I don't think that's a good process. I think this kind of meeting should happen so the community can have input and improve these projects. But I certainly wasn't suggesting that the state be subject to local authority and guidelines. I'm realistic enough to know that's not likely to happen.
Okay, Jess, we want to recognize the next citizen.
Yes, the next question comes from Michael Farragut. I'm looking for him right now. Michael, I don't see you. If you're on the call, if you're on your computer, can you raise your hand, please? If not, if I don't see it in the next couple of seconds, I will ask your question. Actually, I'm sorry. I believe that Delegate Watts wanted to say something. She raised her hand. So, Delegate, I just requested that you unmute. You should be able to unmute now, Delegate. Okay, for some reason that's not working. I will work on that. Let me ask Michael Farragut's question, and then Rick, you can answer it. He wanted to know what happened to the parkland. Why would we take it out of the mall as retail needs all the help it can get?
Well, I think, certainly I don't know anything about the parkland. Again, what we're focusing on is 3.9 acres. We're not focusing on the 78.8 acres, which Erickson is developing, and which that process will go through the county process. And so I think those are the questions you need to ask at that point. I think we talked about the mall office. It's not accommodating our needs and the growth that comes in that part of Fairfax County. We can't give road tests there. It's expensive real estate for us, $200,000 a year in rent. And when you own a facility, you don't pay rent. So I think that's primarily the answer to the gentleman's question.
Okay, and I believe Delegate Watts is now unmuted. Delegate, do you want to say something?
Thank you so much. I was following up on the previous discussion and certainly looking at comparable public information meetings that we have often on road projects, widenings, and so on is I think a very desirable good neighbor policy, if you will, because I think one of the big takeaways from tonight's presentation were 3 specific policy changes. That back in the days of Fair Oaks, there was no internet that you could get on, and so it was convenient for consumers to have it in the mall. Obviously, we don't need that, and we don't need the expense of it now because of the internet. The second thing that I would offer that came out of this was the decision on the part of DMV, based on I don't know all of the experience, that road testing in neighborhoods is not beneficial or isn't required for safety as far as licensing drivers, meanwhile potentially creating serious safety issues within neighborhoods, as well as, again, that neighborhood policy that we're talking about. And then thirdly, as a public information meeting, to be told that policies are going to change as far as appointments. And DMV has always been well suited to computerize everyone who comes in the door and exactly how long transactions take and so on. And so using that ability to manage the flow of people and learn from what we've done with COVID will significantly change the concerns that, again, my district from Guinea Road to the Beltway impact on Braddock Road is on the old policies had a lot more traffic impact than what I'm hearing in this public meeting. And again, the more information that the public has and those of us who try to also answer public questions, the better. So certainly if we need to in any way codify that type of public information aspect of government operations, I think, again, this meeting proves the importance of it.
Delegate Watt, thank you so much for those comments. I very much appreciate. Okay,
Delegate.
we want to move to the next question that was submitted.
Yes, the next question is from Casey Blaylock. Casey, you'll get an unmute request. Go ahead.
Hi, I am a owner in Kings Park West, and I am also on the board of the Civic Association for Kings Park West. My initial question, which was somewhat answered, was about road testing. And I think what I didn't understand, and I was actually one of the few people in Kings Park West who went to Erickson planning meetings and knew that the site was going to be potentially going to end up being a DMV site. I didn't realize at the time, though, that this facility would be replacing the Fair Oaks Mall DMV. So I do have some additional questions. I hope you don't mind. How many people pre-pandemic did the Fair Oaks Mall DMV serve per day? I mean, because you're telling us that it's potentially 800 to 899 post-pandemic, but in actuality, if this is replacing Fair Oaks Mall, what was actually, how many were actually being served?
We probably can answer that for you. Nadine, I'm going to call on you in a moment, or Linda, to see if you've got access to that. But the beauty about Northern Virginia is, and as you saw from that slide, people who live in the current zip code that this office is going to be in, only a third of them go to Fair Oaks Mall. We found in Northern Virginia, and I lived in Northern Virginia 2 different times for 8 years each. And if I needed to go to the DMV at lunch, I went to a DMV near where I worked, not where I lived. Certainly on the Saturdays, you might see more local folks going to the DMV. So that's hard to tell. Linda or Nadine, raise your hand if you've got what we were serving in Fair Oaks before the pandemic.
Linda, I'm going to refer to you on this if you have any numbers.
Linda, I sent you a mute.
I am trying to open my spreadsheet now, so you'll have to give me a minute, unfortunately.
Oh, no, that's fine. I'll move on, and then if you don't mind, we can come back to that. Because I don't mean to be rude, but I work for Fairfax County Public Schools, and to say that like what we are experiencing, and I'm in building, what we are experiencing in our schools now will be the same next school year. I mean, that's like comparing apples to oranges. You can't promise that what's going on now will continue post-pandemic.
I certainly don't disagree with you on that, but schools and the DMV are very different. Children benefit from socialization in a school. Not many people on this call would say it's a benefit to go to the DMV and sit with hundreds of people waiting to be called. So I think
it's a public service.
It is a public service, but again, as the delegate said, we've got 52 transactions online. There is very little reason why you should come to the DMV. If you're new to the area, new to the state, you need to come to the DMV. Every 16 years, you need to come into the DMV and get a new picture for your driver's license. Unfortunately, if you're over 70, you need to come every 5 years. If you're buying a car on a casual sale, you need to come to the DMV. But most transactions, there's no need to come to the DMV.
Well, I think a lot of the people's concern on this call is that just the congestion that Braddock experiences now. I mean, even if you're talking adding 800 trips per day in that one section of Braddock, I mean, the benefit of having Ericsson develop the Old Nova training site is that most of the people who will be at the Ericsson site do not drive. The number of trips it added on to Braddock was very, very low. And I think that's why you're going to have a lot of people concerned about this. Also, the fact that, like Mike Perrell had said, looking at the current locations at the DMV in the Northern Virginia area, there is not a single one that is less than a mile from some sort of commercial site. And as you said in your presentation, it's a mile to Twin Brook and it's a mile to University. Everything else is residential, and even Ericsson, I mean, technically will be a residential site. So taking that into consideration and knowing that this is probably going to be going through, you know, it's going to go through, and how much money will be saved from not using the Fair Oaks site. The Kings Park West Civic Association just had a meeting with Fairfax County Department of Transportation and found out that we will be being repaved this summer. They're going to be adding a bike lane. They're going to be narrowing some lanes, especially in the main roadway, because we have horrible speeding issues in our neighborhood. So I feel like at some point, knowing this is probably going to go through, I think part of the communication that needs to happen about this new DMV site is not what the building is going to be made of. It's going to be how to address the fact that people are going to potentially cut through Kings Park West to go around those 800 extra trips per day. There's going to be some sort of mitigation that needs to happen in our neighborhood to address the rerouting of traffic through. We already experience it due to George Mason, and this is just going to be adding one more thing. Also, can you ensure that testing, that road test, and you did refer that Fair Oaks does road tests.
No, Fair Oaks does not do road tests because the time it would take us to walk a customer out of the mall into the parking lot, do a test and then come back, it's not practical. So no, we do not do skills tests at Fair Oaks.
But can you ensure that post-pandemic road tests will only happen in that parking lot?
I can assure you, unless the General Assembly tells me otherwise. We have done,
and this is being recorded.
Yeah, if you want to question my integrity, yes.
That was more of a joke. I'm sorry.
Please record it and let it be part of the minutes that I'm saying that it is clearly my intent to continue doing road tests in this model. Now, if the General Assembly says they don't like it and they tell me to do it otherwise, I'll do it otherwise. But as I was saying, we've done we've done 42,000 road tests in this model. We are satisfied that we are testing those skills that people need to have in order to be a safe driver. And you know, we will be following up on statistics to confirm that, but I'm also going to school on what other states are seeing who they're doing this model. And yes, I think it's so much safer because, quite frankly, we had one of our employees die as a result of a road test where there was some communications issues. I don't want to have to go through that again. I'm much more comfortable with the in-lot skills test. And so, yes, you've got my commitment that I plan to do that as long as I'm DMV commissioner, unless the General Assembly or the governor tells me otherwise.
Are there any other services that could potentially require, I don't know, something to go through either Briarwood, which is the neighborhood directly behind this DMV site, or Kings Park West?
Not that I can think of, not that DMV would generate. I mean, we do have, as I said, we're going to have 16 employees there. There may be employees who live in those neighborhoods and they'll be using those roads to get to their work site. But no, I can't think of any service that we will offer that'll generate traffic other than someone coming to the office and returning from the office. Okay, Jess, you're raising your hand.
Yes, thank you, Casey. We need to move on to the next person who had a question.
But when
Casey,
you get the number of trips per day for Fair Oaks, that would be much appreciated.
I do have that. It's Fair Oaks. It was actually an average of 399. So basically about 400 customers a day.
Thank you.
And Casey, if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to email the communications at dmv.virginia.gov, and we'll be happy to answer any additional questions that you have there. Our next question comes from Doug Pickford. I don't believe that we saw Doug on the line, so I'm going to go ahead and ask his question. He had a question and some comments. He said, what transportation impact studies have been conducted for this facility? I live across Braddock Road from this proposed facility and want to know what impact this will have on my neighborhood, Somerset South, and what mitigation, if any, proposed for our neighborhood. That was the general gist of his question.
And I think we've mentioned before, at the request of VDOT in Fairfax County's Department of Transportation, Erickson's group did conduct an operational analysis, and we certainly can make that available. It's a very large PDF, but we can make that available on our website for anyone who wants to review that.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Suzanne Willing. Let me try and find you.
I think she seems to be in the down corner here, waving at us. So maybe you
You are. Suzanne, I just sent you a request to unmute. Suzanne, you're still muted. You need to accept the request. Okay, there we go.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to talk about traffic mitigation. I was involved in talking with, through a Briarwood, and I'm a Briarwood resident, the Erickson Group. They did no external mitigation of traffic. When I specifically asked if they had made a proffer to do things like redesign the intersection, lengthen lanes, and other things, their answer was simply no. Neither have I seen anything in any proposal from DMV to talk about the external mitigation things, making a right turn to go west on Braddock Road out of the facility. Is just no. I mean, that's the intersection. The next intersection is a major intersection on Braddock Road. It's our equivalent of the intersection further down on Kings Park. I just see nothing on mitigated strategies. I've tried to talk to Supervisor Cook about the traffic light at Ox Road and Braddock. And right now it's designed to move traffic on Ox Road. You put 80 trips a day, not 30, 39. I'm rounding it down to 40, not 39 to 44 appointments per hour equates to 80 to 90 trips on Braddock Road. 80 to 90 uses per hour. Yep, uses per hour on 2 traffic lights. They're designed for a residential requirements. Yes, they're on Braddock Road. I just don't know if you've gotten VDOT involved for things like changing the traffic light at Ox and Braddock. Have you gotten Fairfax VDOT on board for using something to mitigate that intersection at Burke Station Road and Braddock, and the intersection at now Twinbrook and Braddock Road? That's where the hangups are going to be. And as a member of Briarwood, which is next to this, I will never be able to make a left-hand turn. I'll never be able to make a right-hand turn under what you're looking at now. So that's my comment, or that's my questions. The questions have already been answered, but that's my comment. I'd like some feedback on that.
And I appreciate that. And I think certainly it would be appropriate for us to engage VDOT. I'm sure the supervisor would make sure that the county Department of Transportation is engaged. And so we certainly will get them looking at this. I mean, traffic flow is out of our lane. That is a VDOT issue, and we certainly will have a good conversation with them and share the concerns that were raised here, and see what we can see what mitigating things we can have done.
The other thing, real quick, we're looking at turn lanes that are very short.
I'm sorry.
You're looking at turn lanes that are very short. Even for Erickson, they have no intention of lengthening the turn lanes.
I can't speak to the Erickson project. I know that again is going through the county process, and I would hope those legitimate concerns will be raised. But certainly when we talk to VDOT, we'll talk about whether our turn lanes are sufficient.
That would be great.
Or whether we need turn lanes. So we will certainly look into that. I appreciate the question.
Thank you.
Okay, Rick. The next question comes from Heather McDade. We could not find her on the call, so I believe that we've already answered her question for the most part, but she wanted to know what the state or DMV wanted us to provide details on previous or planned traffic studies pre-COVID-19 on Braddock Road, specifically morning and evening when school is beginning or ending.
Work at these task forces to determine the best venue for holding an offender accountable and thus protecting citizens.
We're getting some feedback from someone. I'm sorry. I see that Chairman Marston wants to make a comment.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner Holcomb. One of the things that I think we don't know quite the answer to yet is that as the facility at Fair Oaks closes, there will be people in that area who will, in the morning, for instance, who would want to drive, with the traffic flow heading downtown or heading to the major business areas. It would be easier to go out to the Chantilly facility at Westfields. So we really don't know, until things get going, who's going to choose to come to Braddock, who used to go to the mall, versus who will now who will now conduct their business at the Chantilly facility, which is once Route 28 and all the work that's being done there to improve that intersection. It will be very simple to go out 66 from Fairfax City or out 29-211 from Western Fairfax there in the government center area and go to Westfields. People will make that judgment. Fortunately, we now have ways where they put on their phone which is the quickest way to get to, and we'll start to see more people having to make that decision and making it based on what Maps or Google tells them to go. So there'll be a certain number of people who will be heading west instead of east.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And certainly I think that was a valid question because pre-COVID, everyone drove to work. After COVID, I will tell you 40% of my workforce is teleworking out of our headquarters building, and I think a large number of those will continue to telework. So, I don't know when Erickson did the study. I suspect they did it prior to COVID, but that's certainly something that should be taken into consideration as well.
Rick, Erickson did the study in November of 2018, and then they revised it in March
of 2019. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Just trying to recall from from our notes. Did you want to address Heather's question specifically about morning and evening traffic and the traffic the traffic counts that VDOT does along Braddock Road?
I mean, I can't really speak to what VDOT does. Again, we will sit down with them and have them look into this. But certainly the DMV traffic, as I said, we've got 16 employees. They will report to work probably at 7:30 for an 8 o'clock opening. We will have some traffic leaving the office, between 1 and 2 when we're closed for lunch. And then we will have traffic leaving at probably 6:30 because our last appointment is at 5:15. And so when we close the door at 6 o'clock, we pretty much have an empty lobby. Again, gone are the days that we would close and have a full lobby that we'd have to manage. So we're certainly cutting down on our traffic.
The next question comes from Nora Lenderman. We are not seeing her on the call, so I will ask her question. I believe that we again have already sort of addressed this. What is the estimated increase in traffic for the Braddock and Burke intersection area, which you've already answered? And who is responsible for lane expansions and traffic light modification in the planning?
Certainly, that's a VDOT, and the county makes those decisions on the roads and the traffic lights, and we certainly can put this on VDOT's radar to make sure that things are done. And I see the chairman of transportation, who also has very good connections with the commissioner of VDOT. I suspect that we will have some very good conversations with VDOT as a result of this meeting.
Okay. The next question is from Rodney McFadden. We are also not seeing him on the call. So again, I'll ask his question. This is a question we haven't had yet. Will you continue to offer motorcycle training at the Braddock Road site?
We will not, and I don't believe we've done that for a while. There are a number of Virginia rider training sites in Northern Virginia, and we have not used that site for motorcycle training, and don't anticipate a need because we don't want that traffic in when we're trying to serve customers. Now, as part of our standard 350 to 400 appointments a day, if someone wants to come and have a motorcycle skills test in the parking lot, we will do that, but we're not going to be doing training. Particularly that type of training usually occurs over the weekend, and we plan to have our area quiet afternoon on Saturday and quiet on Sunday.
Okay, thank you. The next question is for Carrie Chet Campbell. Carrie, when you get the request to unmute your mic, go ahead.
Thank you very much for this opportunity for community dialogue. I'm a Braddock District resident for well over 30 years, member of the North Springfield Civic Association Board. Not speaking for the North Springfield Civic Association Board tonight, but I am state chairman of the Independent Green Party of Virginia, and I am speaking for them. Commissioner, I read your resume tonight for the first time, and it's a very impressive one. Thank you for all your years of dedicated service to the Commonwealth. I hope you know that the Independent Green Party of Virginia advocates for more trains and less traffic, walkable, bikeable, pedestrian, rail-friendly communities, and safer, healthier, growing economy, and also 100% renewable energy, which brings me to my question. Have you looked at using solar panels, geothermal heating and cooling, and energy to power this new development? It is, of course, a moneymaker, a planet saver, and also installing power walls or batteries, which would store the solar electricity that's generated during the day for use at night.
I will say that we did think about solar panels at one time, but the cost really was a challenge for us. And I know you're right. It's an investment. It's not a cost, but that is something that we initially are not looking at. I also, and Jeremy will help me because I know that we're required to meet the Virginia High Performance Building Act, which requires our building to meet Virginia Energy Conservation and Environmental Standards. And I know you're shaking. I know you're very familiar with those, but Jeremy, do you want to go into any more detail about some of the things? Because is this going to be a lead building?
No, no. I mean, the CPSM, which we follow, doesn't require. I mean, gives us options as to how we're going to meet the VES, and we're choosing VES to meet the High Performance Act per the state, state code of the CPSM. So we did have that discussion with solar panels. One of the sort of key issues with that is, you have to provide space inside the building. Space is a premium. Those are some of the issues we're wrestling with, and just the maintenance of those panels. DMV doesn't have that on staff, so they're going to be going the route of getting the renewable energy credits to meet the High Performance Act. So we will be buying renewable energy from a renewable source to sort of combat the fact that we don't have it on our site, but we're going to buy it from someone else and put that renewable energy back into the grid. So that's the route that we're meeting the High Performance Act, that, we will be buying those credits and we will be using renewable energy. Someone, will be using it because we're paying, we're buying it. It's a one-time sort of purchase for DMV, but that's, we tossed that back around for a while, but that's, in the long run, that was the best route for them at the time for this project, and budget-wise and all those things were put into consideration. And we did even, actually, we looked into geothermal pumps, but unfortunately, the VES doesn't consider that as a renewable energy. So we went down that route because we figured that would be the least costly to sort of meet that, but we had some feedback with DEV, and that wasn't going to meet all the requirements that they have set forth. So I hope that answers.
Those are excellent answers. If I can do a quick follow-up.
Yes,
and I think Supervisor Walkinshaw is well informed and can articulate this probably better than I, but Fairfax County is now going to be installing solar panels, but Fairfax County isn't buying these solar panels either. They'll be installed, as I understand it, from a company, and this will then reduce the charges that Fairfax County will have for electricity. And of course, the other benefit to that, as the county executive told us the other night at the budget meeting, is that provides the county the opportunity to get newer updated solar panels more quickly. And it sounded like in your answer that wasn't something that you've looked at, and if not, it might be something you would consider. And I'll go ahead and close out now. I also want to, before I go, thank so much my previous questioners, like Mike Perrell and Casey Baylock, for excellent questions. Thank you, and thanks again.
And Ms. Campbell, I appreciate your questions, your comments. Certainly, as Jeremy was saying, one of the paramount things that we insisted on is keeping that tree buffer. And so I would not want my architect to come back and say, well, if we put solar panels, for them to be effective, you're going to have to take some of those trees down because the building's currently in the shade. And so we certainly would not want to do that, but we do appreciate your questions.
Okay, the next question is from Steve Bell. Steve, when you get the request to unmute your mic, you can go ahead.
Hi, Steve Bell here. I live basically in the Briarwood neighborhood, and I did have some questions, but they've turned more into comments. And
Okay,
one of my comments is that when the cemetery wanted to build a 20,000 square foot facility, including a crematorium, I'm sure that not everybody in this neighborhood would choose that as the best thing to have in the neighborhood. But I think that the cemetery did a good job of communicating with us well in advance And there it sits, a 20,000 square foot funeral home with a crematorium in it. I don't think that anybody would choose as their first choice to have a high density senior living facility next to their neighborhood. But over the course of many months, up to years even, Erickson communicated with this constituency here, and now we will see that project being developed. So mostly for the benefit of the elected and appointed officials on this call, the words good neighbor do not apply to the actions of the DMV with respect to this or this meeting tonight. This is a last minute juggernaut fait accompli, and it is not being good neighbor. It's being having something shoved down our face, down our throats. And I really do wish that the people in charge would do a better job of telling the authorities that we need communication upfront, more often, more frequent, and certainly more in advance of what's going on here, because this is so different than what happened at the cemetery and so different than what happened with Erickson. And it just feels like big government being shoved down our throat. I would also say that this project does not exist in a vacuum or on an island. There is the Erickson project. Just down the street is a new neighborhood, and the prospect for having 12 new homes in the Kenilworth neighborhood, as well as expanding the Cipriano Street into Braddock Drive and down through the Briarwood neighborhood, not far from where I sit right now. And the fact that a DMV facility or project is going to be located so nearby that does not take into account that reality is just, it boggles my mind to think about the lack of integration and coordination, as does the lack of coordination and integration with the DMV. And all that is a way of saying you guys could do a lot better in terms of communicating with, if you do want to be a good neighbor. And with that as a preference, I would like to ask this question. Since this is a community forum, what could any of us on this call possibly say or ask that is going to change the trajectory and outlines and terrain of this project? Is there anything that we can say that in reality is going to change the trajectory here?
I'm not sure how to answer that. I guess if you tell me we do not want convenient DMV service in Fairfax County, we could think about moving to Loudoun County, think about moving down to Prince William, Manassas.
That's being facetious. We all understand that we need DMV services.
Well,
Yeah, it is. It is. To say that you're going to relocate this in Loudoun County is ridiculous. What you need to say is, how are you really going to take into account the feelings and thoughts and observations of the people who really live here and know what's happening on the ground? What are you really going to do other than just to tell us this is a done project? What are you going to do to take our thoughts into account? Like what's going on with Ox Road and Braddock Road? What's going on with Soprano? What's going on with turning left out of DeQuincy onto Braddock? Those are answers that you should have had before you launched this project. Sorry to be a bitch, but I don't like what has happened here. I don't like the way this is being
Excuse me,
presented to us.
Steve. Excuse me, Steve. Please watch your language, and we will mute you if we have to. I'd appreciate it. Commissioner, go ahead, and if you would like to comment.
I appreciate his comments, and again, we have delayed our project's presentation to the AARB to have this meeting. We were previously scheduled to present to AARB next week. We took ourselves off the agenda and asked that we be tentatively scheduled for May. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good comments that have been made here. We will engage VDOT, and I see that Chairman Marston's still on the call, and I will make sure that he, probably before I call the VDOT commissioner, the chairman will call. So we certainly will be looking at that. But again, DMVs provide a service that everyone in the Commonwealth needs. If you want to drive, or if you want any type of form of identification, if you want to apply to register to vote, you can do that at the DMV. If you want to get your passport, your birth certificate, you can do that at the DMV. We sell hunting and fishing license at the DMV. So this is a government service outlet. that is open during the day. It's not open at night. It's not open on half a day Saturday. It's not open on Sunday. So all I'm trying to do is provide DMV services to the people of Fairfax County. Mr. Chairman. Can you unmute the chairman?
Thank you. And Steve, you're, all right. I think I'm unmuted. Am I not?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Steve, some of your points are well taken. The Ox Road and Braddock Road intersection, continues to be, a huge, issue that's been looked at, numerous times. Everywhere you go, in terms of locating a facility like this, it's going to create similar concerns from the citizens. But the state's policy is the 30 minutes or 30 miles, for people to be able to access a division of motor vehicles. It is, I think that this meeting does have a purpose in that we've already heard concerns about the lengthening of a left turn lane. That is something that we can certainly take into consideration. My battery's getting low here, but so I may lose you. But those kinds of things, peripheral to.
I think we just lost the chairman because his battery.
Yeah.
Let's just watch.
Unless he comes back. Could I just jump in?
I'm sorry, Supervisor. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Holcomb, and Steve expressed there some frustrations, and quite frankly, I've spent the last couple weeks beating up on Commissioner Holcomb, privately expressing some of the same things that you just did. But I do have to say, in his credit, he has listened to that concern. He has put this project on hold so we could have this meeting and hear from the community and make hopefully improvements. I think it is true, and I don't like this fact, but I think it is a fact that this project is going to move forward. But I don't think this meeting or your comments here are fruitless because of our General Assembly delegation's intervention, because of Commissioner Holcomb's willingness to listen. We do have an opportunity to make some changes and make some improvements based on the feedback that we get here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Okay, Rick, our next person who registered to speak was Sharon Hubbard. She didn't have a particular question. She had a comment. Sharon, I believe that Sharon's joining us on the phone, and I believe I found the right phone number. Okay. Sharon, if you can hear me, I'm sorry it's not working, but please feel free to email me or email communications@dmv.virginia.gov, and we will pass your comment along to the commissioner. Our next question is from Peter Koenig. Let me find him. I'm not seeing Peter. I'm not seeing Peter on the list of participants either. He had several questions, Rick. The first, I'll ask them all just in a row, and then you can answer them. He would like to know the days of the week the site will be open and the hours of operation. How many customers are expected on an average day? We have already addressed some of these questions. How many DMV workers will be located at the site? Will this site include individuals taking driver's road tests? And did we do a traffic study? Those were his main questions.
Okay. And,
oh, I'm sorry.
Jess, I see that the chairman is back, yes. Hopefully all charged up. And so if we could let him continue the comment that he was making. So,
yes.
Good.
Just to address Steve's question, I apologize. I ran out of battery there, But the issue is, yes, there are things we can do with traffic lights, with timing, that we can ask VDOT to do in terms of neighboring intersections. There are things that the project will be going through. I don't think that there's any question there, but that's the reason we're looking for comments here tonight. And the normal state practice is not necessarily to reach out. We had that difficulty with the electronic billboard, if you will, at George Mason University. That was kind of all of a sudden there overnight because of this process. And I think what may come of this, Steve, is some legislative efforts to make sure that there is a time frame for state agencies to advise the community of their intent to locate a state facility on state property in their neighborhood. And I think that is good feedback. But there are things that can be done based on our conversation here this evening about turn lanes and lights and any other kind of traffic mitigation in neighborhoods, including speed humps or whatever, that we can take a comprehensive look at that. But so, your point is well taken. Thank you.
And Jess, I think I've answered. We've covered most of Mr. Koenig's questions. You asked about office hours. Again, 8 to 6 Monday through Friday, 8 to 12 on Saturday. No Saturday afternoon hours, no Sunday hours. I think we talked about being able to control the customer flow through the appointment system. So I think we did answer most of his questions.
Okay. The next comment comes from Ann Cahill. Ann, I am going to you right now, and I will unmute you in just a second when I find you. There you are. And I just sent you a request. Go ahead with your comment.
Yes, hello. My name's Ann Cahill, and what I have is more of a comment than actually a question. And I'd like to start off, first of all, and congratulate the legislators that we have here for some of the things that they have recently passed, trying to make sure that we have some social equity in how we do land planning and other services that the state of Virginia provides. And this is a project that I think could have used some of that in hindsight, because I was very disappointed to hear that you're closing the Fair Oaks Mall site and opening this one, because there is very little public transportation access to this site, which means that those of us who don't have cars can't get there. And those of us without cars still need things like real IDs and official photo IDs and that sort of services. And I really would like to see the state, when they locate public facilities, take into account heavily how easy is it for the residents to actually get there who may struggle with transportation issues and that sort of thing. I did a Google search today to see how long would it take for somebody who lived in the apartments in Annandale to get to this new DMV site if they had no car. And it takes about an hour. By car, it is a 5-minute trip, but it takes an hour on the bus. And that is if you're at the bus at the right time, because there's only one bus an hour that goes down Braddock Road. Coming from the west is even worse. Fair Oaks Mall had a pretty well-developed transportation center there. This site does not. And that causes some systematic racial inequities among the residents of Fairfax County and Northern Virginia. And how are you going to try to do things to make this site more accessible to those residents?
We certainly will look into that. I mean, one of the beauties of Northern Virginia is that we do have a number of offices that are on bus lines, that are on the metro line. In fact, we opened a new model office in the Boston area of Arlington that has no parking lot. You can't get there in a car. And who we are serving are folks who work in the area. They will walk. We have bike racks, at that office, and it's right next to. I think it's next to. It's not the Boston Metro stop. It's one down, and it's a busy little office for us, and people enjoy coming there. And it's a very good office for people who work in the Boston area. I know, like our Alexandria office is within walking distance of the Eisenhower metro stop, and so we certainly. And you've given me a challenge, and we need to think about that, because we do want to make sure that we are always reaching out to that underserved community. And so I will, if you've got some suggestions, or if there's some way that I can work with the supervisor on a bus line stop, if there's a bus that goes down Braddock, they can make a stop in front of the DMV. We would love to have that assistance.
If this site had been placed just a bare mile or two away on Little River Turnpike or 236, you would have had much better public access to it. I know that you're building it here because you own the land, but for something as valuable as a DMV customer service site, we really need to do better in the future, locating them places that people can get to.
And I appreciate that. Yes, we're building here because we own the property, but I will tell you, Erickson approached us and said, we'd like to buy the property. And I said, fine, you find us comparable property elsewhere, and we'll do a land switch. And they couldn't find anything that worked for us. So yeah, again, someone was asking, what would stop this? Well, I really want to provide service to this area of Fairfax County, and we cannot continue to do it at the Fair Oaks Mall location.
I wonder if we won't have some empty office buildings around here soon in some of our commercial centers like Annandale that might make a better location to allow people to actually be able to get there that don't have motor vehicles.
And again, I don't have a map of Fairfax County in front of me, but if you had a map and you mark off our offices, we have an office in Lorton, we have an office in Franconia, we have a Tyson's Corner office, we have a Fairfax Westfields office, and then we have Fair Oaks to be replaced by this. So I don't know if, I'm just not familiar enough, but I can tell you we've looked for over a decade. We've done RFPs to try to find location, and to the taxpayers' benefit, we bought some state property at fair market value to be able to build an office that provides service. But certainly, we will keep that as an open option. And Supervisor, if you've got any thoughts on how we could consider some public transportation down Braddock, because I'm sure there are buses that run into George Mason, and if we can make it have a DMV stop, we would be happy with that. Mr. Chairman, I know that Jennifer Mitchell with Public Rail and Transportation, I know you also have her on speed dial, so we might want to engage her on some public transportation options for the location. Okay, Jess, thank you, Ann, but that is something I wanted to do some follow up on. Jess, you got to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that. The last person who registered to speak is Tom Dowling. Tom, I believe that you're calling in on the phone and we don't know which phone number you are. I believe you can unmute yourself by clicking *6.
Tom is here. He's signing.
Oh.
He's on video and he's signing.
Oh, I see you, Tom.
Okay, so we're gonna need one of our interpreters to help interpret for us. Thank you.
Yes. Elaine, I just unmuted you.
Thank you. Thank you. I just have one thing that I wanted to mention. I live,
Okay, he's moved over here.
I live very near the DMV site, and you know, it is very hard from where I live to go left on Braddock Road. The traffic has just become unbearable over the years since I've lived in that area. I've been here since 1985, and you know, it's just overwhelming. You know, you have to wait for the longest time on Braddock Road, and George Mason University, of course, is expanding its campus, and the traffic there at that intersection of 123 and Braddock Road has just gotten worse and worse. It's just explosive, and so it's just very, very difficult for us who live in that area. So that was just a comment that I wanted to make. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, unmute yourself, Jess. I know it's getting late, but you're slipping a little bit.
Sorry, I apologize. Let me double check my list. I believe that was the last person who registered to speak. It is getting late. We are trying to be mindful of the time and your time. I do have one person who has raised their hand very early in this conversation, and I would like to address them. I've got two people now. So I will call on you guys, and then we are going to try and keep this as close to 9 o'clock as possible. I know we're quickly approaching that. But please, if you have a question or a comment, please email communications@dmv.virginia.gov, and we will be happy to follow up with you. So the first person I'm going to call on is Nell Hurley. Nell, if you are still here, I just sent you an unmute request, and go ahead with your question.
Okay, a couple comments first. I'm the former planning commissioner in Braddock District. I was intimately involved with the whole Erickson project and spent hours and hours and many hours on that. So I'm very familiar with all the details. Quick comment on the solar panels. The trees that you're putting along Braddock Road are on the north side of the building, would in no way interfere with solar panels, which are generally on the south side of the building. There is a bus that was mentioned. There is a bus that will have a stop. It already has a stop right there on the Erickson property. As planning commissioner, we do have a native plantings requirement for county buildings. It would sure be nice, and I can ask our delegates that are online to try to have the state enforce that, use native plantings. You know, we don't need all that grass. We need to have more native plantings. Hello, Delegate Morrison, nice to see you. Let's have the native vegetation that the county buildings already use. VDOT is more involved than the county. It's VDOT that decides stoplights and all that kind of stuff. I doubt very much that VDOT would authorize another stoplight so close to the stoplight that's just to the west that's already been mentioned that can easily be accessed by the DMV site. But my main question is, why are you gating the property? When we designed the whole thing, the neighbors were very concerned that the excess parking from the community building as well as from the Erickson site, Mother's Day, I think Christmas, whatever, when there's going to be lots of people parking there, why not let that parking lot be open? Then parents could bring their kids there to learn how to drive. You could still have the motorcycle training there. Why are you gating off the parking lot, which would be a facility that the whole county, at least the Braddock part of the county, could use on evenings and weekends? So please, again, I guess the delegates to weigh in on that one. Why close off the parking lot? Why not let the community use it? Thank you.
And let me just answer that. There's certainly liability issues. If someone's using our park lot at night and they injure themselves, like I said, there are liability issues. I will tell you, one of the other reasons that we're closing the parking lot is that we have had neighbors use our dumpster. And in fact, we had to remove the dumpster from the Tyson's Corner office because it was being filled with sofas and toilets and sinks and everything else. We don't want trespassers on our property at night. That's primarily, and I guess this is the first time I've ever heard of neighbors saying, please open up your lots so that people can come in at night and do whatever they want on it. I've told you that we will have no traffic coming to the DMV after 6:30 every night, and I'd like to hold true to that promise.
Yeah,
I appreciate the information on the bus line, and I thank you for that. I thank you for that information.
Nell, this is Dave Marsden. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. That's a good point on the trees. I will tell you that based on a bill that I did this year to try to expedite and increase the amount when people take trees down, how long it takes to recover the shade that they provided and the ability to absorb carbon. We're doing a study this year on that very thing that you have brought up. And one of the things that may occur is when a development takes place and we have to eliminate trees, not only will we hopefully we can require more trees to replace the ones that were taken down, but to put in bigger trees for a faster recovery, but also to be able to mitigate the loss of the trees somewhere else in the county or in the Commonwealth, so that if you take down a number of trees, you have an even greater increased number of trees that have to be placed elsewhere to make up for the loss, hopefully on a stream where it can mitigate nutrients and or in an area where tree cover would be a benefit. So it is something that we're looking into during this off season, and hopefully there'll be a more specific bill next year.
Your comment about your comment about following the county's sort of guidelines on plantings, that's a new issue for me, and I'm going to ask Jeremy to let's look into that. And obviously, ultimately, after AARB reviews our plan, and they will make recommendations to our colleague at DGS, but if that's something, Jeremy, that we could take into account, I'd like to at least have you look into that and figure out what exactly does that entail. And ma'am, if you can send to Jess any links to where the landscaping policies of the county are, that would be helpful for us to look in. Joe, do you have any reaction on whether something like an alternative landscaping plan might be received by AARB? Yep. Can you unmute Joe?
Thank you, Rick, and thank you, Ms. Hurley, for the question. Absolutely. Part of the AARB's review is to review the landscape plan for the facility. And I think Ms. Hurley's recommendation, Rick, with your architect, to take a look at those native plantings and offering that during the AARB review is most appropriate.
Joe, I appreciate that. So Jeremy, and I see Carrie Robinson, who's my director of facilities. Let's look into that. My partner is a landscaper, so I know all about bushes, but I can't tell you what the native plants are in Fairfax County. I just like dogwood trees and azaleas and things that bloom during the spring. So, but thank you. That was a very helpful suggestion that I'd like to pursue.
And Rick,
thank you about the bus line information. That was important. Joe. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, there's one other thing. Delegate Bulova and myself, I did it through a budget amendment. He did it through a bill. We're doing a invasive species study this summer as to what can be sold in the Commonwealth and what would be available for these things. And and certainly I am sure we'll be discussing on state property what kind of plantings we'll be doing on state projects. So it's very timely, but that study is taking place for the next session of the legislature.
Good.
I know we still have.
I'm sorry. As long as kudzu is not one of the native plants, we would probably have the building covered with kudzu after about 2 or 3 years. So that might be my only drawback. But Jeremy, thank you. And let's look into that pretty quickly and make some revisions.
I would offer two perspectives, if I might, on this.
Yes, ma'am.
One is a takeaway for me as we are doing a number of also significant studies about how we move ourselves to greater renewable green energy, reducing our carbon footprint. And certainly in that study of state facilities, that which the budget committees use in approving capital projects, you really underscore the need for us to include state buildings under those revisions of what will be required. But I also then, on another aspect of our energy challenge, is it has always been the case for Northern Virginia in particular that the more convenient the land, the more expensive it is. And it is just hugely expensive to, unfortunately, put buildings where we have proper transit. And somewhere we have got to make a public policy decision about the investments that we will make to match up population densities, transit, and government services. And I would just add one postscript to that, including co-locations on Fairfax County major government land that might be appropriate. And I'm going to add another element on that, not just for DMV, but one of my frustrations for almost decades has been the campuses that we need for our community college expansions that we should have to better serve the population. And that's definitely something that should be transit accessible.
Thank you, Delegate.
Okay, Rick, we have 3 more people, and then I'd like to wrap it up because it is getting late. The first person, I'm going to unmute you. All it says is your name is owner. I see you raising your hand. You should get a request to unmute your mic. There you go.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
My name's Peter Michaelman. I live in Somerset South, across the street from the proposed building and also across from Erickson. I'm disappointed that it sounds to me like you didn't do your homework. I don't know if you're familiar with Braddock Road, but it is one of the busiest roads in the county. The traffic is terrible before you put Erickson and before you put the DMV in. George Mason gets worse and worse every year. I think the DMV or the Department of Transportation is doing construction on Braddock Road. You're not going to be able to make right turns. You're not going to be able to make left turns. Sometimes I leave my house at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I cannot make a right turn on Braddock Road. I can't go there. It's 2 miles of traffic. Solid. You can't do it. And I wish you had done and by the way, all the comments today say, well, you'll do something about the traffic. It's too late, because not only do you have the 800 people that are going to be coming and going, and let's say it's 400 cars. That's 400 coming, 400 going. And that doesn't include the minimum of 500 people that are going to be going to the Erickson facility at all hours of the day and night. And you have no idea what this is going to do to the traffic. And people are going to be very upset that you haven't considered this. And you can make all the construction projects that you want, but it's too late. And I wish you had considered another site other than this, because this is going, I promise you that this is going to be a traffic disaster.
I appreciate the comments, and this is not we've been looking at sites for a decade. And this, as Delegate Watts said, real estate in Northern Virginia, prime real estate is extremely expensive. And so, again, I guess the question is, do we need to provide DMV service in this part of the county? Because, we've tried, we've even had Erickson, as I said, offered to buy our property and put us somewhere else. They couldn't find anywhere else to put us.
Sir, I understand that. How about a road leading away from Erickson and the DMV that doesn't come out on Braddock?
If you've got some land that you want us to look at, let us know. We've been looking for a decade, sir. And again, the question is, do you want service in that part of the county or not?
No. Truthfully, no.
Okay, that's fine. If the elected officials support that, we can relocate outside of the county. I appreciate your comment, sir.
Our next comment is from Jean Cadet. Jean, I just sent a request to unmute your mic. Jean, are you there? Hello, Jean. Okay, I'm not quite sure what happened with Jean. I'm going to go to the next person. You're just labeled as PMKNP. I just sent a request to unmute you. Hello, are you there? Can you unmute your mic if you can hear me?
Now I can, yes. My name is Phyllis Claw, and I also live in Somerset South. And actually, Peter took some of my thunder from me because I was going to say it takes me 3 minutes now, even with the pandemic, sometimes to make a left turn out of the subdivision onto Braddock Road. And I've clocked it. And I've clocked it ever since Erickson decided to come in, which was a whole other story about a done deal with the county. Even though we had 2 years of community meetings, it was a done deal before they even came here, as far as getting zoning permits and that kind of thing. So we had input, but it was bogus, I believe, and so did a lot of other people. So that's one thing that was shoved down our throat, and now the DMV is being shoved down our throat. Erickson did not do the traffic analysis, including the traffic coming out of DMV, the new proposed building. So I'm requesting that VDOT do a full traffic study, including the new DMV site, the Erickson site, the 30 houses going in up near George Mason University. They need to include that new subdivision also in order to do a full evaluation of the impact of the traffic on the 900 cars you're proposing. I can't believe with all the people that you're saying can do everything by internet now, that there are 900 people a day that need to come to this site in order to do their DMV business. This is a residential area. The properties you showed, University Mall, Twin Brook Shopping Center, they're not adjacent. Something that's adjacent is next to. Those are not next to. These are facilities that are miles away, mile away, it's still mile away, and you've got residential all through it. You're putting a business into residential areas. I agree with Peter. I don't need a DMV across the street from my house. And again, this was thrown down our throats way too late. No consideration whatsoever for what the community wants here or what the community needs here. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Rick, that was the last person that has raised their hand. Before I turn it back over to you to wrap things up, I just want to reiterate to everyone who I have been chatting with, if you I believe I've wrapped up everybody that I need to through chat, but if you have any additional questions, anybody on the call, questions or comments that need some follow-up, please email us at communications@dmv.virginia, spelled out, .gov. And we will be happy to answer your questions there and follow up with you. Rick, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Joe, I don't want to put you on the spot, but could you maybe just briefly talk about next steps in the presentation to the board, what the board does, your involvement in that, and certainly the presentation of the AARB is a public meeting, and so you will be able to sign up and comment, I believe. But Joe, if you give us a little bit more detail on that, I think the folks might be interested in that.
Sure, Rick, my pleasure. Joe D'Amico with the Virginia Department of General Services. We provide staff support to the State Art and Architectural Review Board. The review board reviews capital projects built on state property, primarily the exterior of the buildings as well as the landscaping. Architects will present to the AARB on behalf of their project owner, in this case DMV. Their architect will present to the AARB, and I believe it's May. Rick, correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, we're tentatively scheduled for May at this point.
It is a public meeting. The public does have an opportunity to comment on the project. Anybody interested in participating in the May meeting of the board, you can send an email to aarb@dgs.virginia.gov, Virginia spelled out. Jess will also have this information to provide to anybody that would like to have that information to participate in the meeting.
Joe, I will chat that right now as we wrap up. I will chat it to everybody. So if you check your chat feature, I'm going to find that email address. I have it in my notes, and I will send it out to everybody before we end this call.
Thanks, Jess. And one more comment, Rick, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to thank Supervisor Workinshaw for pulling this meeting together. For me, it was informative from a standpoint of DGS's responsibility in the management of state surplus property. Very clear to me that although we do communicate with localities when surplus property becomes available, and we did with Fairfax County in this case, I think we, DGS, could probably do a little bit better discussing these surplus property opportunities with our local government partners and discussing the possibility of having these type of discussions with the community where these facilities will be located. So, Rick, I just wanted to add that comment and appreciate the opportunity to participate in the meeting.
Joe, I appreciate you being on the call with us. Jess, Mr. Chairman, any last words? Delegate Boulevard, Supervisor Walkinshaw? I don't want to interrupt your ice cream eating, Mr. Chairman.
I just want to thank everyone. Hasn't been an easy meeting, but an important meeting, I think. So thank everyone for giving up your evening, especially Jess and Marcia from my office for making this happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Delegate Boulevard. Thank you, Delegate Watts. Always love to hear you talk transportation. You're such a source of information. So thank you for joining us on the call. Jess, any closing words? Okay, again,
I'll leave that to you.
Okay, well, again, let me thank you. I know I'm hoping that we've got some areas of agreement, and you know, I'm just trying to provide service, a needed service to the citizens of this part of Fairfax County. And we've been trying to find a good location for decades. And I just hope that we're able to make some modifications based on the suggestions made today that will make this more acceptable. So we'll go forward and keep you up to date. Jess, any logistics, administrative follow-ups? And people, you're going to keep the comments open for a while?
I'll sit here and keep the comments open for a little bit, and I'll probably do that until 9:30, and I will copy and paste those before I close the meeting out. So if anybody would like to use the chat feature, that's fine. I will be here until 9:30, and then if there's any follow-up required, we will email you. If it's immediate need, we'll email you tomorrow, and then if there's anything that requires a few more days, we'll get it to you though. And again, the email is communications@dmv.virginia, spelled out, .gov. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And let me again thank Elaine and Amanda. Your agency have been such strong partners with us. I know that when we have a customer who needs interpretation, y'all are always at the ready for us. And we could not have better partners. And thank you for taking so much time out of your evening to be able to help all of our participants participate. So thank both of y'all. Supervisor, I think I saw your hand raised. No, okay.
Nope.
Okay. Okay. I thank everyone, and everyone enjoy what's left of the evening. Thank you.